In a world where hopium and common sense collide, starring the CryptoKeeper and BlockchainCrusader. Welcome to Debate Crypto.
Question everything, trust nothing. It's your boy BlockchainCrusader here at another episode of T8 Thursday with the one and only Gareth Soloway. And the great thing about tonight is we got them all to ourselves, guys. So it's gonna be a great show. How's it going, Gareth?
Going well. Thank you for having me. It's great to be the sole player here with you on T8 Thursday.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited, right? You do a lot of traditional finance stuff. You do a lot of things that are just outside of crypto, but they all come in they all come and work with crypto at the same time. So I'm very excited to actually have you just one-on-one on the show. Usually we have other people on, but CVO unfortunately couldn't make it today. But don't worry, guys. CVO is going to keep coming on the show. He just had some technical difficulties. But yeah, man, super excited to have you on. I've seen you on many other people's channels, having that one-to-one conversation, and you go pretty deep and pretty heavy on some stuff that I'm more than excited to talk about tonight. But where do you want to get started, right? With you told me that the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, had a speech earlier this week. Do you want to start there?
Yeah, let's touch base on that. So just to fill everyone in case people aren't aware, you saw that big rally in Bitcoin yesterday. I mean, big, maybe not. It wasn't a huge rally, but it was a nice green candle up.
Yeah.
It was on the back of basically risk on because Jerome Powell had a speech, and in the speech he said that the Fed was now at the point where they were going to raise rates less and less, and essentially get down to the point where they're not raising it anymore. And we know that the Fed has raised it 4 times in a row of 75 basis points. So the market had some short covering there. Bitcoin saw a nice little pop there. A lot of cryptos upticked a little bit. And that's really the first verbiage where the Fed is now saying, hey, we're going to start calming down the hiking of rates. Now, for me, I look at it and I say, all right, did the market deserve a big rally? I mean, they're still going to raise rates by 50 basis points in about a 2-week span, right? On December 14th is their next meeting. And you probably have not seen the impact of the last couple 75 basis point hikes in the economy, right? It takes 6 to 9 months for a one rate hike to filter fully into the economy. So I think the market's maybe a little bit ahead of themselves here. But I do think that at least when you come to Bitcoin, you're in that final downward move. And again, it's been a long time since I've gotten even slightly bullish on Bitcoin, but I'm starting to get there. I still think it goes to 9,000, but I think that end is in sight. It's less than $7,000 away. I mean, percentage wise, it's big from here. But if you were in at 68,000 or 69,000, it's dropped a lot. Now it just has a little bit left to go before I think you get that bottom. So it's kind of exciting to see, because I do think that 2023 is a year where crypto, well, at least Bitcoin and ETH flip to where they become that strategic safety hedge, right? So up until now, we know when the stock market falls, crypto generally falls, right? It's de-risking money coming out of risk assets. But I think there's a point coming up in the next year where you see a flippage where the economy will continue to sink, stocks will continue to sell off, Bitcoin starts to get a little bit of a surge.
Okay, I was gonna ask you about that, right? Because you said that comment about one interest rate hike takes about you said 7 to 9 months to really filter through the system, and we've done so many. Is like, how long is it gonna take for the system to really filter out through all these interest rate hikes, and is that going to extend out the bear market to past even the traditional Bitcoin cycle, where now in 2024 you have the next happening? So you're saying that by 2020, what you said, 2023, end of 2023?
Yeah, at some point in 2023, I expect it to basically, what you'll see, and what I'm expecting is all these rate hikes eventually by the mid portion of next year are filtered into the system. We'll be in a pretty nasty recession by that point, and recessions this is going to be a different recession than anything we've seen in the past 15 years, right? Because in the past 15 plus years, anytime we got in a recession, the Fed printed us out. But now you have inflation that is far above what they want it to be. And so it's going to be really hard for them to print their way out of this. And what that's going to do is it's going to drive stock prices much lower, right? So you have a recession that keeps getting worse and worse and worse, which means corporate earnings are going to get worse and worse. valuations on stocks have to come down even more. But there will be a point now where investors, and this is going to be coupled with transparency through regulation. Once you get regulation in the crypto space, big money is going to say, listen, I have to put money somewhere to work. Doesn't make sense in a bad recession to put it in stocks right now. Gold, yes. Silver, yes. And then also, I think Bitcoin starts to become a player here. And again, it has to be coordinated with transparency, though. We know from FTX, there were so many big money players that got screwed there. And there's no way big money is going near crypto until there's some sort of rules that these companies have to abide by. So you get transparency through regulation. You then see the economy get worse and worse in 2023. I think Bitcoin bottoms out around 9,000, and you start to actually head back up.
Is there any regulation that you see somewhat coming onto the books that you're either worried about or excited about?
I don't know a lot of the ins and the outs of what they're talking about right now. The worry, obviously, and fair enough, considering they're politicians, is that they overregulate. We don't want that. I think that if you have to choose between a little overregulation or no regulation at all, you choose a little overregulation at this point, because it's just not, this is not a good environment in crypto where, investors have to pull their money off exchanges because they fear it's going to vanish tomorrow. That's not a healthy atmosphere for investors and for investing. So you have to go with that side. And my hope is that politicians, and I think a lot of them do, they realize how many jobs are associated with blockchain technology now. And I think you have to say that the popularity of crypto, even in this bear market, it's getting more and more popular. And that means votes, right? So if they push things too far, they might not get reelected. And I really hope that pressure brings forth the right amount of regulation.
Yeah, I hope so too, dude. I'm super worried about over regulation to an extent where it's really bad for the regular average person, because they're so about protecting the user that it becomes an institutional only game, and then retail's kind of left out, to hold the bag and
Right.
kind of really miss out on the new revolution of crypto and traditional finance and so forth. But you said Bitcoin you said 7 or 9,000?
I'm looking now around 9,000. It's the
9,000?
kind of the signals I'm seeing out there are kind of pointing to 9,000. Some of the things that I'm looking at, and kind of some cool stuff, is that you see what happened with FTX, and the equivalent of that kind of happened in '08 with the stock market with Lehman Brothers collapse. And what I did was I looked back at the S&P when Lehman collapsed. Lehman collapsed on September 15th of 2008, and it took about 5 to 6 months for the stock market to bottom after that occurred, right? So it was about 6 months of September, and we bottomed at the beginning of March '09. And so that gives us a time period now. And this is what I've been kind of isolating down, like, when will crypto finally bottom out? So it looks like 6 months from about a week or two ago when FTX really started to collapse. So that puts us kind of towards the Mayish period of 2023. And then I also looked at, well, how much did the S&P fall in the following 6 months once Lehman hit? And it was about 40 to 45%, which puts us right around that 9,000-ish area, give or take. The 9,000 area also triggers a 10,000 break, which will stop out a lot of weak hands. Like there's going to be, bottoms in markets are put in when you freak out the maximum amount of people. And it makes sense that a break of that even number of 10,000 will really freak out a lot of people. And so that's likely where that final flush out occurs at that point. So I think that makes a lot of sense. A lot of people wonder why Lehman is like FTX. And what I would say is that the exchanges are essentially the banks of the regular industry, right? That's where we put our money. That's where potentially we've been earning returns like 10% by staking. I mean, all these type of things going on in the crypto markets. And so there is a lot of similarities there. Interestingly enough, in 2008, we saw, following that collapse in the banking issues, we saw regulation called Dodd-Frank. It came out following the financial crisis. And here we are with issues that are probably going to bring forth regulation. So there's so many weird similarities between the '08 period and what's going on in crypto that you can't deny that there's probably some sort of, similarities here.
And how long did it take for regulation from the '08 occasion for regulation to come out after that?
I think it was by early '09. So it was
Okay.
actually within 6 months that it actually was pushed through because it was
Okay.
such a dramatic issue, right? There were so many people burned, much like in this crypto scenario, that the politicians actually had a fire lit under their ass, right? They were like, all right, we got to do something because people are demanding it. And I think that's what you'll see. I think you'll see a framework within 3 months of this, and then ultimately probably push through within 6 months, which should coincide with the bottom as well. So kind of cool stuff there.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll show you guys, and this is just some cool charting, and this is also giving me confidence that we're getting close to the lows in crypto, is that if you look here, right? So if we go to this chart, so this is the Terra Luna drop, right? So the Terra Luna drop occurred in June of 2022. Bitcoin was trading around 31,500. It bottomed out around 17,000 and change. It was about a 45% drop, right? And then if you look at the FTX drop, it went from 21,000 and change to basically 15 and change. That's about a 25% drop. And what's interesting about that is that if you look at this drop compared to this drop, this one, arguably the FTX collapse, it was actually worse than Terra Luna, right? In terms of people getting burned and everything like that. And so in theory, this one should be bigger. This one should have been a bigger percentage drop in crypto. The fact that it isn't is telling us that money is getting used to these bad headlines and they're okay with it. They're becoming, I shouldn't say they're okay with it, but they're getting used to it. It's becoming
Yeah.
more like, okay, there's another collapse. It's not the end of the world for Bitcoin. And I think if that makes sense, if we see another collapse, in theory, it might only take us down 15 or 10%. And as you get down there, people just start to say, all right, listen, Bitcoin's going to survive. These bad actors are going to get flushed out. Let's start to buy down here versus just panicking and selling.
Okay. So, yeah, I also do agree. Like, I think the only way we go lower is if we see some big event happen. But do you see anything technical besides what we've already discussed with, like, the the similarities to the previous '08 situation? Do you see anything in the actual technicals that you say, yeah, if this price point we don't cross, or if we lose support here, then bam, we're going straight down over here?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a good question. So I think for me, I mean, there's a couple things. So on a technical basis, you have to look at this low. So right now we've held this low here on the chart, right? This was the FTX low. We tested it here and we've come up. So for me, that's a level I'm watching. I actually do think we break lower. One of the reasons why I think we break lower is that Bitcoin's been falling here, but the stock market's actually been rallying. If we go to the S&P 500 and we look at the SPX, you can see here that you've actually rallied up. So what is this? The reason why that's concerning is that if you're in the belief that the economy is going to get weaker, then the S&P is going to go lower. And the question is, if the S&P, let's say, drops another 20%, can crypto hold the line on the lows here, even though it hasn't even rallied much off the lows? And I would say in this environment where people are so scared, and if you see a big sell-off in the stock market, you'll likely see the Bitcoin chart break down again. And I also think that you just have levels now, right? I mean, if we look at the longer term chart, I mean, we haven't tested this pivot yet right here, which is around 13,000 or so. And that is a huge pivot of support, as is this one right here at around 12,000. And so I think that for the most part, now that we're below 20,000, which was that 2017 high, we're kind of in this no man's land until we get down to at least 12 to 13,000.
Okay, so we're talking about these lower price points. We're talking about a recovery that would take possibly 6 months or so, to bottom out. How do you see it playing out? Do you see it as a slow bleed to these 12 to 13 price points, right? Even 9,000, like you said, a slow bleed to it, or is it going to be more of we're going to go sideways, we're going to drop real quickly, and then we're going to start seeing a massive jump upwards? How do you see that scenario playing out? Or
Yeah, so
to
so
your
I think
best?
Yeah, and I think here, if we look at the chart, it's kind of fascinating because one of the things we can see here is that this is the Bitcoin high from 2017 right here. And what you can see is you had these big drops, and then we kind of bottomed out, we went flat. And then right here, what's fascinating about this is that right here, we started to kind of have this very quiet. Initially, it was a bigger pop, and then a smaller pop, and then we went to sleep, right? So what's fascinating here is from here. So this was June of 18, and this was November of 18. In November of 18, we had this breakdown here, which eventually took us to the lows where we finally bottomed out on Bitcoin. Now, what's super intriguing to me about the confluence of these charts is that if we go, so remember, June of 18 to November of 18, if we go to the current period in Bitcoin, we have the same sort of thing where we have the low here. Let me put this in again. It was June, right? And guess where we broke down right here? We had a quiet period, right? So you had the same kind of initial up move, then a smaller one, and then flatlining, and then we broke down. So June to November, and then we broke down here. So I guess my point here is that if we go back to 2018, and let me go back here. So this is kind of where we are in the Bitcoin cycle right down here. You know, we've just broken down. I think that probably over the next few months, we actually go down more sharply once we break lower, but then you start putting in your bottom, and it probably needs a good 6 months of bottoming before we can start to bounce up a little bit.
Wow. So yeah, that means that, with that scenario being the scenario that plays out, not only are we going to sharply drop at some point in the next couple of months, but then, like you said, 6 months of sideways consolidation bottoming out. I mean, if people are paying attention right now, that kind of tells you, right, you have some time to maybe accumulate some capital. Obviously, there's never financial advice, but what I'm thinking is I've got time to
Yeah.
accumulate capital, and then I've got time to slowly dollar cost average into a good position throughout those 6 months or so before the markets rally up. So I have time to research the projects if I'm investing in altcoins, right? Because the altcoins are going to move with Bitcoin once it recovers. So
And
for
it
the
makes
people that are
sense, right?
panicking,
Because
you got
right,
time.
it makes sense that you're going to have some time because number one, there's a transparency problem that has hurt trust, right? So you're going to have this period where some people are going to be like, okay, let me give it a shot. There's going to be other people that are like, no, I got burned because I had my money with FTX or with Voyager or any of these other ones. And so there's this lack of trust, kind of like what we saw back then. Although I even argue that the trust issue is even more so. So it's going to take time for that to rebuild. Just like in any bear market, people are going to be very nervous about putting money to work. And I also think that, until you get that regulation, which probably isn't coming for a few months at least, you're going to have no big money willing to commit. And let's be honest, if we want Bitcoin to get to 100,000 or 500 or a million, you got to have some big money in the mix. It's not going to happen by people buying 0.1 Bitcoins at a time, right? You need some bigger buyers out there. So I think that's the key, is that most bear markets are like this. They don't like reverse instantly back up. It takes some time. It takes some work. You have a lot of bears that are panicking while some bulls are now starting to accumulate. And that's what was going on down at the lows on that chart.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's so that means that by the end of 2023, we would still be somewhere below about 20K,
Yeah.
give or take,
Yeah, I
right?
think so. But the beauty of it is, let's say we do bottom out at 9,000. If you do accumulate, let's say around 10 or 11 even, I mean, you're making good money if you get back to even 20. At that point, you've almost
Yep.
doubled your money. So it's kind of cool. It's all relative to where your entry points are with how your performance is.
Yeah, dude, that's wow. I wasn't thinking it would take that long, but you've put a very good case for it being a slow bleed, right? Massive drop, then that bottoming out scenario for about 6 months. So, because a lot of people, the biggest panic is they don't know when the bottom is, and they're just either buying big chunks right now or they're not buying anything at all, and they're just
Right.
saying, yeah, it's never gonna recover, and they kind of leave the space. But the fact that the way you've laid it out, there is time for people to accumulate. Obviously, this is never financial advice, but even for me myself, right? I'm trying to play out, what do I do? What am I going to be doing? And that does give me time to be able to accumulate some cash and get into some good positions and
And
not have to like feel rushed to go buy something right now because it's down 70% today. I'm just going to go
yeah.
out and buy a ton of it, right? When we still got
And
more
I
than
think
6 months.
actually, I think the negative is you don't want to put a ton in now, because
Yeah.
if you put all your money in now and it does go to, let's say, 11 or 10 or 9, you're going to be stressing, right? I mean, then you all of
Oh
a
yeah.
sudden you're down almost 50%. So my method, and I've already started this method, is that what I'm doing is I'm basically selected. I've taken a chunk of money, and I've said, okay, this is the amount of money that I will ultimately be okay financially having in Bitcoin. No matter what, I'm okay. If it goes to zero, I'm not a destitute pauper or anything like that. But my guess is it's not going to do that. And so what I did is I took 1/6 of that and I actually already put it in Bitcoin. And the reason I did that is because, listen, none of us know where the bottom is. It might rally up from here, and at least if that happens, I have some exposure. If it goes down another $3,000 or so, I add my next 1/6. Another 3,000, I add another 1/6. Eventually, I get a 6/6 position. So 6 of those 1/6 equals that full amount of money. And the beauty of that is that in a weird way, part of me is kind of like, I hope it goes a little lower because I want to buy my next 1/6, right? So you all of a sudden it takes it away from, oh my God, I put all my money in, so please God, let it go up, to now like, you know what? If it goes down, good, I'll just buy more, and it's a very good mentality where you're not like emotionally attached to like, oh my God, if it goes down 20 more percent, I'm going to be freaking out.
Exactly right. My first cycle around, I was like that the whole time. I was sweating every time it would drop 2-3%. I was like, please, please stay in the green, stop going
Yeah.
down, right? But then after so much time in the red, I got numb to it. Just like the markets are getting numb to the negative news now. I got numb to it, and it's just time in the
Yeah.
market. So at those price points, right? This time frame, right? 6 months, give or take, Bitcoin dropping, bottoming. Where does that put Ethereum during that same time frame following Bitcoin?
That's a good question, man. That is a good question. So, I mean, if ETH, so number one, ETH performance wise, you could argue is doing better than Bitcoin. And the reason why you could argue that is because Bitcoin's taken out its June lows. Ethereum has not, right? Here's your Ethereum low from June, and it's actually trading above those lows. So that's impressive. To me as a technical trader, that's relative strength in Ethereum. Now, it doesn't mean that if Bitcoin goes to 10K or so, that Ethereum won't break down a little bit below this level. But in the very sense of that, at least it shows that there's still accumulation. There's obviously some money buying into it and trusting it. So I do think that if Bitcoin goes to 10K or below, Ethereum probably heads down to maybe 650 or so. But for the most part, for me, I'd be a pretty heavy, decent buyer around 650, right in this vicinity right here. I think that, again, one of the interesting things about Ethereum is if it's considered a security. So number one, we have commodities as crypto, and we have securities. We know that from Gary Gensler. So the question then is, well, what are going to be the rules for securities? And essentially, my guess is it's going to be somewhat like audits a certain amount of times a year, certain things like that create that trust and transparency. And there's probably going to be some sort of fees associated to being listed on the exchange, just like if you're a NASDAQ stock, you have fees to be listed on the NASDAQ. And the reason why the fees are good is actually because it actually kind of makes the crappy coins go away. Like there's a level to entry. Like you need a good product that people want or that they use so that you get the money in and people are willing to stake you essentially. So I think for the most part, you look at Ethereum and say, all right, this one is going to be a winner long term. It's just a matter of how low it goes here. And I would say if Bitcoin heads to 10K or so, or sub 10K, you're probably looking at that 650 level.
Wow, dude, that is great news. I mean, Ethereum, right? A lot of people talked about Ethereum when it was at 3,000, 4,000, right? I wish I would have bought it at under 1,000. This could be a life-changing opportunity for some people. I know it was for me, right? I've been buying Ethereum from $600 when it dropped down from 14. I bought 600, 300, 200, and I even bought some at $80. And it's
Wow.
definitely been a great play long term. Obviously, if we revisit those levels, my portfolio is gonna be kind of breaking even again from back in the day. But nonetheless, the amount of accumulation of Ethereum that can be happened at those prices, knowing what Ethereum is building, even if it is deemed a security or not, right? Where it's headed, where it's growing, I think it's magnificent. And if people pay attention, right, they could potentially make some life-changing money. And
Yeah.
I don't say that to try to encourage anyone, but that's just the way I see it. And I would be super happy. Obviously, it's a mixed feeling because I don't want it to go that low because I kind of want it to be hitting new all-time
Right.
highs, right? But realistically, I know that those prices are not going to probably be seen ever again at some point. And we're all going to be wishing, man, I wish I would have bought more at 600 once we leave those prices and possibly never go back to it again.
Yeah, and I actually agree with you on that. I think once this cycle bottoms out, that you won't see these lows again in our lifetime. And the reason I say that is
That was
because
going to be my next question.
yeah, so the reason I say that you won't see it again is that the reason you're seeing it now is number one, there was a bubble, there was the printing of money was going crazy. I mean, there was just so many issues out there that were attributing to this big pop that when it did pop, it just dropped these things. Then you add into the mix Terra Luna and FTX, and it really just created this drop. Once you get regulation, you're going to get big money in there. And I know a lot of crypto people are like, oh, we don't want big money in there. But the positive about big money is that they are not the type to panic that much, right? You know, like someone who invests, you know, Warren Buffett has a huge position in Apple. He doesn't panic when Apple drops 20%, right? He's like, all right, I got my $100 billion in Apple. I'm just going to leave it there and do it. So it creates, what you're going to see is once you get that regulation out there, the big buyers will come in and then they're just going to hold. And that's going to create this floor on Ethereum as well as Bitcoin that you won't see these lows again. And it's not to say you won't have bear markets. Every market has a bear market. But it might go, let's say, back to 5,000, and then the bear market might be down to 3,000 instead. Then it's going to go up to 10, maybe back to 7, you know, kind of that type of maneuver.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I can definitely see it, right? I can definitely see Ethereum being a 10,000 plus coin at some point in the future, by maybe some point at the end of this decade. So that's why I'm a long term holder of Ethereum and Bitcoin. Obviously, it's just easier to accumulate larger portions of Ethereum at $600 than it is Bitcoin at 7 or 9,000. That's definitely, I'm excited for something like that. Guys, if you haven't smashed the likes, smash the likes. If you haven't joined Danger Close Alpha, we're giving away 5 ETH in a competition. We're minting out the commodities right now. We did the reveal this morning, so the NFTs have been revealed, the ones that have been minted so far. So if you got some crazy power-ups, let us know in the Discord. Somebody already has the double agent, and if you're interested in knowing what that is, make sure you jump into the Discord. That person is always going to have a big advantage, but that doesn't mean that they have a guarantee to win. There's still many ways to win. It's like 5D chess. Many different angles to be taking into account to make sure that you can strategize and take the 5 ETH home yourself. So guys, join Danger Close Alpha if you haven't already. So Gareth, are you seeing anything right now in the traditional finance system as well, from besides what the Federal Reserve is doing, that we either should be worried about, or that could affect crypto one way or another, whether it's positive or negative?
Yeah, one of the things that's actually a negative in the regular kind of stock market, and this is a headline that I saw today, was Blackstone actually started limiting withdrawals from one of their REITs, which is a real estate kind of investment trust. And what that kind of, you can't help being in crypto being like, wait a minute, is this spreading to something else? You know, is it going beyond crypto where you're starting to see people yanking money out and running with it, right? And then they're pulling it out too fast. And if that does start a domino effect, then you could actually see some really big things. Now, granted, it's just a one-time thing, but for me as an investor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be really watching closely to see if I see other investment vehicles in the regular stock market start to do this type of thing. That could be a real big thing. Like that could create a run on assets, and I mean it could extend even to the banks. So again, I don't want to panic anyone. I don't want to say that, but it's just something that we want to pay attention to here. That was the first headline that I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's kind of interesting here. Let's keep an eye on that.
Yeah, for sure. Right? And that segues perfectly into what I was going to ask you next, which is these bank runs, right? Everybody thinks that they're only happening on crypto because crypto's such a unregulated space and it's terrible, but bank runs can happen on banks too. And if we are headed into a recession, and I don't know if you think this, but I know other people have said it, that it's going to be way worse than the 2008 recession. Could we see some bank runs on the banks as well in the next 8 to 12 months if things do start to get a lot worse? And do you like pull out some of your cash from the bank to try to preserve it yourself, to try to protect yourself, or do you just leave it in the bank, or do you put it into like gold or silver, like physical gold and silver assets? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, so number one, I do hold some gold and silver, and again, that's just it's my kind of I know you guys are big into prepping and doing all that stuff, and it's kind of that reason, right? So like if one day we woke up and credit cards didn't work, we couldn't get our Bitcoin
Nope.
out because the internet was down, or obviously if you have it in cold storage, that's different. But the point is if everything was down, I could still buy things with chiseling off a little piece of silver. I could buy a loaf of bread. It's kind of like that insurance policy. If everything went to hell, you could still manage that. So I think that's just a common sense thing. I sleep better knowing that I have a little bit of gold and silver on hand, just in case the dollar, I wake up one morning, what if the dollar has collapsed or crashed? Then gold all of a sudden is worth 10 times what it is now, probably Bitcoin as well. So I think that's important. Whether or not we see runs on banks, I do think eventually you will have that scenario, but I don't know if it'll be in the near future. I think the government still is kind of the gold, weirdly enough, and this sounds very weird, but the US government is still like the top of the hill when it comes to other countries, right? And so it'll take some time before that happens. One of the interesting things to keep an eye on is that one of the cycles I watch is the 100-year cycle, right? So cycles are really important in investing. It kind of deems our behaviors, things like, you have cycles, whether it's it's the lunar cycle. You have human cycles like women have their cycle. There's like so many different things, right? There's that everything's on a cycle. And so we had the Spanish flu in 1918, and then in 1920 or 2020, about 100 years later, you had another type of pandemic, basically. And so then you say, okay, well, when was the last depression? Well, 1929 was the stock market crash, which is the end of this decade. And then it led into the Great Depression. And so you're coming up, and still a little ways away, but you're coming up to the potential for that 100-year cycle. And so I think as an investor, you don't want to freak out over that stuff, but you want to be aware and maybe prepare a little bit.
Yeah, be prepared, right? Because if that is true, right, and it doesn't have to be in 2029 or 2030, right? Could be a few years after. So, these next few bull markets that do come up, you should have some type of plan and prepare for if that is a scenario and there is another Great Depression of some kind. But talking about banks, talking about Great Depressions, talking about crypto, somebody in the chat really wants to know your thoughts on Ripple and XRP. I don't think I've ever asked you personally what your thoughts are about Ripple and XRP, working with the banks and so forth. What do you think before you even look at the charts? I just want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about this, like $589 XRP, $10,000 XRP, if it were to take over the SWIFT system, right? If it were really to completely replace the SWIFT system and work with all the banks, what are your initial thoughts about XRP and where would it put it?
Wow. So, I mean, my first thought is that, oh my God, the U.S. government would never let that happen in a million years. If it happened, it might be kind of cool because then you kind of get it away from government and that kind of control. But, man, I feel like they would fight tooth and nail to not allow that to happen. So again, anything is possible. Obviously, if we go through a great reset in the late 20s or whenever it is, that anything, we could see something that I don't even realize emerge from that. And it could be a whole new financial system. I mean, just getting on new financial systems, I think we have to recognize that if you go into history, and this is just some more awesome history stuff, that, these kind of world currencies, like, the US dollar, if you go to the British pound in the colonial days, that was like the gold standard that everyone used. The general consensus is that a reserve currency lasts for about 100 to 120 years. And we're kind of approaching that period for the US dollar. And you can see the ripples, right? I mean, whether it's China launching the digital yuan or Russia trying to kind of go around and with China and try to go around the US dollar as a reserve currency, you can see the writing on the wall there. And one thing to keep in mind is that if the reserve currency is no longer the US dollar at some point in the future, there's a lot of countries holding billions, if not trillions of dollars that they would dump on the open market. So again, it's nothing that's like immediate. You need to act on it today. It's just things we want to pay attention to. So when it comes to Ripple, you just don't know. I mean, maybe something like this does emerge in the future. But again, I do think that governments will be very reluctant to allow that.
Yeah, well, we're also seeing a lot of gold heading east lately. I've been seeing a lot of articles about gold being bought up by China, Russia, and some of these other governments out in the east. So yeah, I'm not a believer in the XRP thing. I don't believe we're ever going to hit a $589. Just the market cap doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
And I understand the whole argument about Swift and the trillions of dollars that it does every single day and so forth. But I think, like you said, if that were to be the occasion, I think it would have to be something very massive, like you said, a later great reset in the late 20s, right after a Great Depression, massive change in U.S. government status in the world for something like that to really take place. Could it be the New World Order thing? Maybe, right? Maybe that's the whole plan later down the road. But I'm not a believer. But what are you seeing in the chart for XRP currently?
Yeah, so basically the chart has what I would refer to as a little bit of a bear flag pattern. You can see again, here's your upside down flagpole, and then this is what we would refer to as a flag, right? Kind of looks like a flag. And so right now that's slightly bearish. It's known as bearish consolidation. If it breaks above this, you still have this low. See all these lows right here? That's going to be your kind of level to get through. If it got through that 44, 45 cent level, now you're starting to look healthier, but right now the chart's not looking super healthy. It was looking a lot healthier earlier on, like a month ago or so when it was trading up here. And then obviously what we saw happen with FTX kind of crushed that. So right now the chart just honestly doesn't look amazing. Doesn't mean it can't change, but right now it doesn't look great.
So that's a bearish triangle or a bearish pennant. What is that
It
called?
would be like it's called a bear flag, or in spirit
Oh,
of
bear
bear
flag.
flag. Basically, again, flag patterns they come in two forms, right? So you have the upside down one, which is the bear, which is a drop like this, which you see here, and then you have either a right angle or it can be up to a 45-degree angle like this. Kind of that consolidation like that, and it kind of forms that flaggish pattern. Or the bull one is the opposite, right? A sharp run, and then you get that sideways down consolidation like this, which usually this one leads to a break up. This one usually leads to a breakdown.
So if that were to break down, what kind of pricing would you imagine would it go for XRP? I want to know because I want to see if Nick gets liquidated on his position.
Oh boy. I mean, just the first, and again, who knows how low it goes, but the first major support, if you take these lows down here from June and you kind of just drag it right here, you can see it's kind of like a little bit of a kind of kissing this level and then hitting here. So this level would be the major support. Right around 32 to 33 cents would be where you'd expect major support to come up.
Okay, perfect. That's still a bit of a way for Nick, but
Nice.
I'm always
He's
excited
an
to see
XRP
XRP go
believer,
down.
huh? Or just an investor?
What was that?
I said, is he an XRP believer? He's hardcore XRP.
I think he's a secret XRP believer. He doesn't like to say anything because I give him a hard time about it. But he is an investor. He definitely holds a lot of XRP at very cheap prices.
Nice.
So I'm always excited to see that price get a little bit closer to his entry point.
Nice, man.
But yeah, man, I thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on here on TA Thursday, right? You guys can be anywhere, but you're here. And, Gareth can be anywhere, but he's here tonight bringing you this great information. So make sure you smash the likes. Make sure you go follow him, right? Make sure his links are down below. Make sure you go follow him on Twitter, on YouTube. And if you're looking for trading, you're looking for, technical analysis and education, he's got a website. And you have a website with education. And do you have a trading group?
Yeah, I do have a trading group, but more for stocks. But the education is by far, guys, that's the biggest, most empowering thing. Like, you want to get to the point where you're recognizing these patterns and basically making money in bull and bear markets. That's where it's at. Check out verifiedinvestingeducation.com. It's got all my knowledge in a webinar and in a course that I put together.
Dude, that's awesome. That's what people need. People need to invest in themselves, invest in education, because now's the time, right? We talked about it in the show. You have 6 to 12 months before everything starts to slowly play out and come back. That's the time where you need to educate yourself and get prepared. Make a plan for what your portfolio is going to look like. How are you going to execute these next couple of trades or investments in general? Obviously, it's not financial advice, but make a plan, guys. This is how you do it. You get educated by somebody that has a lot more years of knowledge. That's how you look for mentors. That's how you look for people to teach you. You're not going to be able to learn this stuff on your own. Maybe you can, but it's going to take you a lot longer than if you get information from somebody.
And that's the key, right? Is that I've made all the mistakes in the book learning this stuff. So the goal is that you learn from me so you don't make the same mistakes. And I tell you this, the market either makes you pay a crap ton of money by making the mistakes, which is my route, Or if I could do it all over, I'd learn from someone that knew this stuff, and then I probably would have saved 75% of the money I lost earning.
Yeah, dude. I'm gonna be checking out your website. I knew you had something, but I couldn't remember what it was. I'm gonna be checking out your website, to be honest. And I'm gonna, because I love getting educated, and everybody comes on here. We've had many different people that have different styles, different things. Everything kind of goes, and I like learning about the different styles. It's almost like learning about the different crypto projects. They're all crypto, they're all building somewhat similar things, but they're all still very unique in their own ways. So I'm definitely gonna be checking out your website and your webinar, like you mentioned. So guys, go follow him if you haven't followed him. Smash the likes if you haven't smashed the likes. Join Danger Close Alpha and try to win 5 ETH. If you've got the time, now is the time, right? Because the markets are sideways, the markets are down. We know things aren't great, but we want to give back to the community. We want somebody to take home 5 ETH. That will be happening. So get involved with the NFT, with the Danger Close Alpha commodities drop that is minting right now at dangerclosealpha.com. Join the Discord. And remember to question everything, trust nothing, and until next time, hodl like it's hot. See you guys.